Rob.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead.
Wait, we're going.
We
He's
got
a Red Sox.
an audible right on.
We got a Red Sox hat. We're starting right here. Sorry,
man.
we're going Red Sox hat.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was hoping this would pay off. We talked in September, I think, going in the Missouri State game about playing a 3-4 defense and how Ronis in particular would react to that. At this point, how much have you seen 3-4 from people, and how do you feel like he, in particular, but the line in general, has held up against you?
He's done a nice job, and we've seen a fair amount of it. You know, a lot of people were, I think in the Missouri State game, it was their #1 front. You know, they didn't really play anything else, but there's a lot of teams we played that have played odd spacing against us, and I think Ronis has done a really nice job.
Any other questions? Any other Red Sox hat?
And I mean, I think it might have been against Cal. It seemed like when he had a guy right on his nose, maybe it might have been affecting his snaps a little bit. Has that been an issue for him? You feel like he's zipping
not
back
that
there?
I've seen it. I think he's done a nice job with it.
Rick.
Stanford and Andrew Luck, they put him out in space a lot. Do you have a preference as to whether having him out in space to have a better shot at getting him there, getting pressure on him, or would you like to keep him in a pocket?
I would like him to be in outer space. Get that taken care of. Put him in a rocket and send him to the moon for the weekend. So, I mean, he can do it all. He can break the pocket, break contain. You know, that's the one thing you kind of marvel at when you look at him. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, but he's really, really, really athletic, and he throws the ball extremely accurate on the run. But he can sit back in the pocket and do it. So, you know, you're picking a poison whether he's in the pocket or out of the pocket. You know.
Chris?
Coach, your defensive line played particularly well against Washington. How would you assess their development throughout the season, in particular Wade?
Yeah, I think Wade's really come along and has played great football for us in the last 4 or 5 games. You know, as I thought going in, our D-line would be a strength for us, and you know, that's always been apparent to us. I think Az is the best D-line coach in the country and does a great job with those guys. In the 3 years we've been here, you know, people keep question mark going in because we've lost players from the year before, and at the end of the year you're like, wow, the D-line played pretty good, whether it was Will Kwafu's group 2 years ago or Brandon Bear and Kenny Rowe and those guys last year, and we lost some good players, and then all of a sudden you lose Zach and Kenny and Brandon, and now all of a sudden it's Deion's making plays, Brandon Hannah's making plays, Trout Turner's making plays, Taylor Hart's making plays. So, you know, I've been really impressed with our D-line.
Aaron?
Coach, you talk about time of possession being overrated. On the flip side, if a team is able to control the ball and limit your number of possessions, would you be concerned about that hurting your opportunity to wear down their defense?
Yeah, and we don't talk about wearing down defenses. And really, for us, it's plays run. You know, and if all of a sudden there's a huge discrepancy in plays run, where one team's running 80 plays and the other team's running 50 plays, that's a problem. But if one team has the ball for, you know, we played UCLA last year, and we had the ball for 20 minutes. They had the ball for 40 minutes. We ran 2 more plays. We ran 73 plays. They ran 71 plays. So that's the part where time of possession. But if another team is running 80 plays and the other team's running 50 plays, then that's a problem. So it's opportunities, you know, to get plays run and to perform. But it's not just time of possession. That's why I think, you know, if people look at plays run, that's where I think it becomes a problem.
Rob?
Follow up on the D-line. I think Tony Washington was able to come back last week. What kind of impact did you get from him going forward? Can he help your
Just
rotation?
strength, yeah. He helps our rotation. And we were playing a 7-man rotation. Now we're back to an 8-man rotation. So, you know, we just basically had a short bench a little bit when he was out. But, you know, him back in, you know, the team's running 70, 80 snaps a game, and we're going 50 and 30. You know, I think it helps us.
Rick?
Stanford 4-3. Did they do anything unique with it, or is it fairly much what you've seen with before?
They're actually a 3-4 team.
That's what I meant. 3-4.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you know, we've faced them. They do a really nice job of transitioning, and they got kids who can play multiple positions. So, you know, you'll see Chase Thomas as a defensive end on one play, then you'll see him as an outside linebacker. You know, they can kind of mix and match and present some problems for you, but they're kind of similar to what we do defensively, so we're kind of used to it.
Coach, how does a team that uses its tight ends so well change your game plan going in against, say, a team like Washington who, you know, doesn't use 3 tight ends every game?
Yeah, but Washington uses 2 a lot of times, so it just depends. And everybody we play on a weekly basis changes, whether it's offensively or defensively, and you just have to adjust. And really, the whole preparation goes back to, you know, it's not like, hey, this team's like a team we played 4 weeks ago. This is what they do, and our guys really getting an idea and a grasp of what the game plan is from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's why practice each week is so important to us, because each team is kind of unique. And obviously, what Stanford does is very unique, especially in this conference, because we don't see it. So.
Rob?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other Red Sox hat? Warren?
Coach, 2 years ago, there was a lot made of a turf team going down, playing on grass. Is this a game of speed, and is there much to be said about playing on the grass there? You know, they talk about keeping the grass high. Do you pay much attention to that?
No, I mean, we played on UCLA's turf, you know, grass. We played on Arizona's grass. We played on Arizona State's grass. We played on USC's grass. So, you know, I think a lot's made when you lose on grass. Then obviously it's the grass's fault. But when you win, then no one talks about, are you playing on grass? So, I mean, we just play. If they want us to play in a parking lot, we'll play in a parking lot. So.
What are the breakdowns on the missed field goals last week? Is that a competitive situation between Alejandro and Rob going forward?
Yeah, it is a competitive situation, and the breakdowns were really just timing issues on Alejandro's.
He had enough leg to make those kicks.
Yeah, he does all the time. You know, that's the one thing. We know going into a game, we don't say, hey, he's really good from 35, so let's kick a 50. You know, we talk about it pregame, you know, where's he good from? And when we're in a situation we have to make a decision, you know, I defer to Oz, what's he good for? Yeah, he's good. So, you know, we know what our guys can kick pregame. We know what our guys have kicked during the week in practice. And it's all charted out for us. And we know when we're in 4-down territory or when we're in, you know, we've got a shot at kicking field goals. So.
Pregame, that's one thing they're looking at when they're warming up is what kind of, what distance they feel comfortable.
Because a lot of times you can say, hey, this kid's good from 45, but then you get to a ballpark and there's a lot of wind. Well, he's good from 50 going one way because the wind's at his back, but he's only good from 30 going the other way. So.
Adam?
Shaw is in a similar situation you were in a few years ago, taking over an established program already and trying to take it to the next level. What have you seen? How has he put his stamp on?
I'll give him a ton of credit because it's been seamless. You know, so you know I think sometimes when it's there's you know a drop off offensively, drop off defensively. You know, what did they do? There are different coaches coming in, but they seem like they haven't missed a beat from last year's team. And you know, obviously, I think they've won 17 straight or 18 straight, whatever the record is. Right now, they got the longest streak of consecutive winning games in 1A. So I think David's done a really good job, and that's not an easy task either. But he's done a good job, I think, in putting a coaching staff together. You know, because not only did Jim leave, but Greg Roman left, Vic Fangio left. You know, there's some other guys that left that staff to go to the 49ers. So you know, he's done a great job of putting together a staff and really implement his plan and what he wants to do.
Dawn, we're going to go to the phone lines. If you have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad, and we'll wait the first question.
And our first question comes from the line of A.J. Jacobson with Rivals.com.
Coach Andrew Luck obviously receives a lot of attention, but you know Stanford averages, their running backs average like 6 yards rush. What do you need to do to slow down the Stanford running attack?
Yeah, the matchup really is with their offensive line and their tight ends and fullbacks because they do such a great job of blocking at the point of attack. You know, when they've got some kids in DeCastro, Martin, Schwartzstein, and the guys up front, Yankee, that do a really good job, and it'll be our best matchup against probably the best offensive line we'll face, and that's where the game's going to be played.
Dawn, are there any more questions?
No, sir, there are no further audio questions at this time.
Jesse?
Chip, with the Stanford defense, is there any particular unit or players that really stand out as the strength of that defense?
They've got good players at every level, but you know Chase Thomas, I think, leads our league in either sacks or tackles for loss, or he's right near the top. He's a kid that jumps off the film out you. Their whole group of linebackers, you know, Tarpley, Bergen, Lancaster, who's taken over for Shane Scove, who's arguably their best player. And they've got some physical players out back in the secondary that have played a lot of football for them. But, you know, to get to that level, they're good everywhere. You know, there's guys on the defensive line, Stevens and Gardner, Trent Murphy, the other outside linebacker, is a kid that you really got to keep an eye on. So, you know, they've got a lot of weapons on the defensive side of the ball. That's why they're the top defense in our conference.
Brian?
Coach, is there anything that you can take from the LSU game and their rushing game that you can apply in the game plan with Stanford as far as like the power that they use?
A little bit, but you know they do it a little bit differently. You know, there's still principles that you apply when you're facing two back sets and a tight end, but one thing that makes Stanford diverse is all of a sudden they'll have 6 linemen in the game, or they'll have 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends, which is a little bit different than the way LSU approached the game. So.
Sam?
Talk a bit about DeWitt Stuckey and the impact he seems to have made with the defense this year.
DeWitt's played great for us all year long. He's been our most consistent linebacker. Started every game for us. He's really just one of those guys that has a great understanding of what our defensive scheme is, and a really good understanding of what the other offense is trying to do to feed us. And he's been a real, I kind of guess, the key to us on the defensive side of the ball, just because he's been the most consistent player. You know, Michael Clay is a great linebacker, but Michael's missed a few games. Kiko's missed a few games. You know, so really DeWitt's been the one guy at the inside that we can count on, and he's done a great job of it. You know, and to be a senior and finally get his chance, because he played behind Spencer and Casey. You know, he's taken full advantage of every snap he's gotten, and really has played at a high level.
Rob, talking to your offensive line guys, they were saying these linebackers stand out as guys who are more prone to want to hit you than run around you than a lot of groups. Is that how you would assess them? Are they a really physical group that way?
It's a real physical group. You know, they have a mindset at Stanford of, you know, they want to be physical in what they do offensively, they want to be physical in what they do defensively, and that's, you know, that's what those guys do. And they're good. They're all good-sized kids. 240, 235, 233, 246. You know, they're built for a reason.
Sure. It seems like you know, you mentioned their offense versus your defense. Seems like Stanford has a knack for like 2nd and 4, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. I know there's always an emphasis, there's an even more emphasis on how you guys play 1st and 2nd down against that.
Yeah, and that's always the key to being a great 3rd down defense is what goes on in the downs before that. And they do a very good job of being efficient on 1st down and 2nd down, so that they're one of the top teams in the country at converting 3rd downs, because they're always usually in 3rd and medium and 3rd and short as opposed to 3rd and long. And that's kind of their mentality. You know, they're a run-first operation, but you can't get caught up in that, because if you do, they'll throw some play-action passes over your head. So I think everybody really has to be very sound in understanding what their assignment and their role is and what our defense is.
Dirk?
You touched on it there a little bit, but how does their run offense set up their pass offense?
It's because Andrew's such a good ball faker, number one, and then they have so many weapons, and they're so multi-formational that they're not the same formation every play. So, you know, first it's 2 tight ends, then it's 3 tight ends, then it's no tight ends, then the fullbacks motioning out, then they're unbalanced, and is that kid eligible on the backside or not ineligible on the backside? You know, there's 6 offensive linemen in the game. They really keep you guessing, and then by the time you kind of figure out what they're in, then they snap the ball and they're gone. So we got to be really sharp as they break the huddle in terms of our guys getting lined up quickly and making sure we identify the eligible receivers.
Warren?
Coach, no question Stanford is big on both sides of the football, but can a case be made for speed and technique to beat them? Would that be a good, sound way to beat their size?
Sure. Yes. I'm agreeing with you.
Is too much being made then of your size? I mean, we talked about it with Auburn, with LSU. I think speed is a good way to beat a bigger team.
I don't understand the question. I mean, Wade Killakepe and Ricky Omuli are bigger than any offensive lineman they have. So, I mean, I don't think there's a size discrepancy in our D line. You know, Isaac Remington's a 6'5", good-sized guy. So I don't think we look at it that way, to be honest with you. And if you look at our offensive lineman, you know, Mark Asper's 6'7", 323 pounds. You know, we've got Darian Weems is a 300-pounder. Nick Cody's up near there. You know, we've got decent size. Carson York's 6'5", 295. So we've got decent-sized guys on our side of the ball too. So.
Rob?
You guys have been pretty good in kick coverage, punts and kickoffs. They're pretty highly ranked in both. Particularly dangerous returners, or are they doing things with the other 10 guys that are tough to deal with?
It's both. You know, Brian Poley, their special teams coordinator, does a really, really good job. They've been really well-coached team. You know, it's a key to any game. I mean, when you pit the 2 teams like we are in the conference right now, you know, you're not going to get, someone's not going to get to where Stanford is, or someone's not going to get to where Oregon is and not be great on special teams. They know there's, I would imagine, not seen in practice, but I'm sure there's a big emphasis for them in practice, just like it is for us in practice. But that's a matchup to watch in the games, is how good they return the ball and how good do we cover.